What's up, everybody? This is Shane from Ferocious Fatherhood here doing another 30 for 30 interview. Today, my guest from Ohio, I got Steve Mistovich from Hall of Fame Fatherhood. Steve, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Shane. Good to be here.
Yeah, man, super excited to have you on here. I'm loving the background there, man.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier, grew up in Virginia, so you're out there in Ohio, not that far away, man. That's
No.
exactly what it looks like out there, man.
Yeah, especially during the fall time, favorite time of year for me, and it's a good place to be.
Oh, man, it's absolutely beautiful.
Mm.
Well, Steve, welcome, Matt. Take an opportunity, introduce yourself, talk to us about Hall of Fame Fatherhood, and then we'll dive into these questions, man.
Okay. Well, I'm 40 years old. I grew up, like you said, here in Ohio, and I became a father at 18. I was actually 18 years, 2 months, and 9 days. I was 3 months before my high school graduation. My first son was born, and he's soon to be 23. And then fast forward a little bit, I met my wife 9 years later, and when my oldest was 16, my wife and I had our son, who's now 6. And so literally from the beginning of adulthood, I don't know anything else but being a father. Now the degree to which how well I've done that has definitely gotten better over time. But yeah, so that is what got me into, Hall of Fame Fatherhood, and just sharing and talking with men and guiding men along the journey of fatherhood. It's not only been the most impactful thing in my life, but it's obviously leaves a huge impact on your kids, and that's, there's a lot, how do I want to say it? There's potentially a lot of things are off nowadays, it seems to be, and seems like a lot of men are stepping up to the plate to, change that going forward. So just trying to be a part of that.
Yeah, man, that's awesome to hear. I will say I was talking to Chris from Rising Father earlier, and it really didn't seem like my son's 4, and I know when he was born, there wasn't a lot of information out there for us. So with you having, you said your oldest, you had him when you were 18.
Yeah.
Man, how much was there any information out there at all for you?
No, and I can't really say that I necessarily looked for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I come from a very traditional family. My parents are still together. Actually, both aunts and uncles are on both sides of my family are original. They're all alive today. And so I grew up with a very tight-knit family. And so I look to them. And given my age and, my lack of resources to really take care of my son at that time, both my parents and my ex-girlfriend's parents at the time, stepped up and really supported us through that. And if they didn't, who knows where I'd be today and where, my relationship with my son would be today.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's kind of lost where I was going with that. I'll just leave it right there for now. It'll come back.
So you had your son, like before you graduated, you had baby in arm, right?
Correct.
Man, so did that alter, like how did that were you still able to graduate? Did you have any issues there or anything?
No, yes, I did graduate. He was born in February and I graduated in May or June. So, and he was at my high school graduation and all that. And so as far as school wise, it didn't really affect anything. My initial reaction was when I was finally able to sit down and tell my parents, hey, I'm about to have a kid. You're about to be grandparents. my initial reaction was, hey, let me start a landscaping lawn care business and, and do that. And with my parents' support, that's what I did. As far as mentally, I would say that's what affected me the most, because I was looking at what my peers were doing, going away to college and, doing whatever track they were doing as, non-parents, and not, like, thinking I'm missing out and not really realizing like the gift that I have in front of me. So I was kind of living in two worlds, because shortly after my son was born, we split. His mom and I split. We were together for like 2 years before that. So here I am, a single parent, trying to navigate that, co-parenting with his mom. And I have this freedom on the other side that's like, oh, well, every other weekend, I can go hang out with the guys and chase women and, do whatever. And so I kind of got lost in that. And perhaps in my view, I didn't set the best example.
Man, that's huge. Were you still, so after that, did you actually start your business? Your lawn care business?
Yeah, like literally, he was born in February and we were cutting lawns and landscaping in April.
Wow. Wow. I mean, that's impressive though, stepping up and being willing to do whatever it takes. I know a lot of people at that age, when they find out that they are going to have a child, don't necessarily go that direction. They'll kind of go the other direction of, I'm going to stay at home as long as I can, mooch off parents as long as I can. Maybe that's not the right word, but
Yeah,
that's the route that they go. It sounds like you just went the complete opposite direction. Like, hey, I'm going to take this head on, and this is what we're going to do.
yes, and this is kind of like a recent realization for me. Like I said, I come from a traditional background, and so does she. Like her parents are still together to this day, and when we split, that worldview got blown up. So like my oldest son, I never stayed in a house, like the three of us never stayed in the house together. So when that worldview got blown up, like I kind of just lived in reaction mode to this new situation pretty much for like 9 years, like just bumbling around trying to figure out how to co-parent a child together and get myself on my feet. And that was a struggle. I guess I go back to the mental aspect that the operating system didn't get upgraded fast enough. If that makes sense.
No, it definitely does. That's yeah, I mean, it definitely does. So let's kind of go back to like your childhood. You grew up a traditional family, your parents were together. How influential was your dad in your life?
I mean, he was a tremendous father. I mean, growing up, my sport was basketball. I played that. It didn't matter the weather. I played with ice on the ground. It didn't matter. And it also didn't matter to him. He was out there, catching the rebounds and passing me the ball, doing whatever, trying to beat me, and he did the same thing for my brother. I have a younger brother, and coaching basketball teams, baseball teams, and I mean, I would say just a typical relationship between a father and son. He was a pain in the ass back then, and as I grew in my fatherhood journey, I hate to say it, but my parents were right. Like, oh well, you'll see when you get older. I got to give them some props. They were right on that one. you do grow an appreciation for the wisdom that they did try to hand to you. So
Yeah, absolutely. It was something my father and I were talking about. He was like, "Yeah, you went through a phase when you were like 14 or 15 or something, where all of a sudden, mom and dad, we were dumb, and nothing on our side changed. It was what you went through." And like looking back at it now, I was like, "Yeah, I was an idiot. Yep,
yeah,
that was dumb." And I've
yeah,
actually, since being a dad, I've gone back several times. My parents be like, "Hey, do you remember when I said?" Yeah, I'm really sorry about that, man.
yeah,
Y'all didn't deserve that.
yeah,
It's hard to eat that crow sometimes, man.
yeah. It is. Yeah, it is. But
Mhm.
uh,
So, so with him being, a big impact in your life, what were some of the major lessons that you learned from him?
hmm, uh, always say you're sorry. When you do something wrong.
That's going.
Um, Speak the truth, no matter how much people like it.
Hmm.
Uh, Always be yourself. And these are things that he set the example for, not necessarily uh, just told me to do.
Hmm.
Um, and another one, I would say one of the biggest ones is, you're the sum of, you know, the five closest people around you. You're, he would put it, show me who your friends are, and I'll show you who you are.
Mm, that's good.
And um, so yeah, I would say those are the big ones.
Yeah, that's good. I've always heard the, show me your five closest friends and I'll show you your future, but I've never heard, show me your five closest friends out and I'll show you who you are. That
Mhm.
that is really important. That's a good one. I really like that. I've also heard every time I have these talks, I don't think I've heard a person yet be like, yeah, they sat me down and told me this. It's always, yeah, they showed me this and they showed me that. So, like, I mean, how would he show you some of those things? Like, how did he exemplify some of those things?
Mhm. So I mean, he was very quick to acknowledge his faults and acknowledge, when he screwed up.
Hmm.
Um, and that's one thing that, like, my father wasn't uh emotionally closed off. He was very, I've seen my dad cry, too many times to count.
Hmm.
Um, what are the other ones I said? I mean, he stuck to it as far as showing me, setting the example for who you surround yourself with. And he always surrounded himself with family and very few guys outside of that.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, there's nobody that I can think of off the top of my head that was kind of like the suspect friend that, like, why was dad hanging around that guy?
Mm.
Um, so I lost the other lesson that I've said.
Well, while you're thinking about that, I'll ask you. So, did you get to see your dad hanging out with his group of friends when you were growing up?
No,
Okay.
typically not.
Okay.
Um, because he was working two jobs and then like coaching.
Hmm.
He'd go to work, he did HVAC. Um, so he'd come home and then go hustle on the side. So typically I'd go work for him and
Hmm.
make he'd throw me a couple bucks or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, so he sacrificed a lot of time, you know, as far as that.
Yeah. So he did he was out working quite a bit.
Yeah, between working, side hustle and then family time, he didn't leave much time for friend time on a consistent basis.
Hmm. Yeah, I see
So
that a lot, especially now. I see a lot of like individual men who don't have that strong um, friend support zone. And I think it definitely weighs kind of on us. I know I don't have the support system that I want to have. I know that I need to get out there more and, kind of put yourself first at times to be like, hey, look, I need to kind of unwind. I need to go out and, I mean, not necessarily do anything bad. I don't need to go out to the bar. I don't need to go clubbing, but,
Right.
hanging out with other like-minded individuals, man, that is so important. And I know that's kind of what I wanted to do with Ferocious Fatherhood is get people, just like you and me together talking and just building our networks together, where get my network overlap with yours, and then really be able to work on the mental health aspect of being a man and being a father and not just being isolated. So I really want to say thank you for coming on and being willing to talk and open
Yeah.
up about your fatherhood experience and all that stuff. So what are some of like the core values that you incorporate into your fathering style that you try to pass on to your kids?
Mm. I'm really trying to work on patience. Um, I get very impatient at times, and sometimes that boils over into, anger. Um, so really trying to, you know, maintain, be the mountain is how I like to refer to it. Um, be that, be that like steady figure that's not swayed one way or the other, whether it's with my wife or with my kids. Uh, you know, I want them to feel secure around me, and that's
Hmm.
not something that I've always done well.
Hmm.
Um, so really, that's the big one that I'm working on right now.
Hmm.
Um, um, but I'm much like my father. Um, you know, service. My dad, we'd complain about him because I mean, he helps anybody and everybody. And sometimes it's like, Dad, you're helping too much.
Hmm.
And it's like, you know, perhaps, maybe, but so service, I want to be of service to my community. Uh, love, uh, truth is a big one. Like, always tell the truth.
Hmm.
Like, I don't care what you did. Like, tell me the truth.
Hmm.
And I'm gonna do the same. Like, you don't have to like me, but you're gonna hear
Hmm.
how I see it. And
That's a big one. That truth one, that's a big one. I found that it's always easier, regardless of what the truth is, with my kids, with my son. He's 4, and me just to say, hey, this is the truth. This is why we can't do that, or this is why we can do that. And I don't. I usually, I mean, I'll word it appropriately for a 4-year-old, but
right,
that
right.
that truth is so important to really build our relationship. And I found that is an absolute huge one.
Hmm.
Has I mean, it's not always easy to do. Has there been um, any circumstances like between you and your kids where when you told them the truth, I mean, it strained your relationship?
Yeah. Um, so like with my oldest, he went through a rough teenage patch. You know, it was around like 15, 16, and he was doing some things that got him in some legal trouble,
Hmm.
uh, just not very healthy habits. And, you know, he was going through a dark time. And, we were trying to work that out. We meet with his mom, you know, trying to figure out like what's going on, what do we do? And there was around that time, like, he didn't spend the night at my house from like 15 till probably like 20, 21.
Mm.
Um, but in that 2-year gap is when it stopped, because like he knew where we stood. He knew like, hey, you're gonna pay the consequences of your actions, and we'll still be here, but you know, it is what it is.
Hmm.
You gotta fess up. And so yeah, it didn't. our relationship wasn't real good during that time period. But we stuck to the truth. And then he graduated high school, moved away to school in North Carolina with his girlfriend. And once he got out on his own and understood, like, it was like literally the week that he was down there, like, it felt like our relationship changed, because he was calling me. Like, in the beginning, I was like, why is he calling me so much? Like, we never
Hmm.
talked this much. Like, but then it just continued. But he was calling me like, hey, Dad, what about this? Hey, Dad, what's your thoughts on this? And for the life advice, like, and we built that bond, like, through that distance, because I think it kind of hit him like, oh, see, when you're out on your own, you don't have your parents around,
Hmm.
9 hours away to catch your fall. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, that's probably the biggest rift that it's caused.
Hmm. Yeah, I know my parents they always told me the truth, regardless of how much it would hurt. I can remember being told the truth about my grandparents when they got cancer and they were sick. I mean, of course, it was age appropriate, but that
Mhm.
that just built so much more trust between us. And like, kind of, I mean, what your son did when I went away, I was able to call up my dad and be like, "Hey, what do I do in this situation? What do I do in that situation?" And I was even able to call up my mom, and be like, "Hey, I need some motherly love here. What's going on? What do I
Right,
do?"
right. Yeah,
And it
yeah,
wouldn't have happened if I didn't have that trust. That's so important to have, and I believe that a lot of it comes from just telling the truth and being honest with your kids, because they're smart. They know.
yeah.
You lie to them, you might get away with it for a little bit, but they'll know. They'll catch that. They'll catch that shit so
Oh
quick.
yeah. Yeah, it's like they pick it up energetically, or like
Hmm.
just intuitively. They know there's something off, and they may not even be able to verbalize that to you, but you can tell they're a little bit more anxious,
Hmm.
or like, rambunctious and not listening, not paying attention to you, whatever it may be. And it's like, oh yeah, they know. Like,
Hmm.
you can't fool them.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. My son is really big into dinosaurs, and so we watched something where one of the dinosaurs was eating the other one, and he's like, "Daddy, what are they doing?" I was like, "Oh, how do I explain this? Your favorite dinosaur is being eaten right now. Let me. How do I put this?" And I tried to pull a fast one on him, and it did not work. He's like,
No?
That don't make sense. What? What? What
What
do you mean? They're not playing
what'd you
tag."
try to tell them? What'd you try to tell them?
I tried to tell, "Oh, they're just playing around. They're playing tag. It's no big deal." Nope, it did not
No?
work. "Yeah, they're playing tag." "Well, why is he not getting up? Why is he not chasing back?" Like, what?
Mm,
And then sure enough, it was like, "Hey, that wasn't the truth. I'm sorry I tried to lie to you. This is what's happening. Dinosaurs eat other dinosaurs, and yeah, things like that."
mm.
But man, they catch on to everything, don't they?
Yeah, but that says something. Like, you could have easily brushed that off and be like, some stupid show, he probably won't even remember,
Hmm.
he's only four, like, whatever excuse. But like, to correct that with him, you know, it'll be years before he realizes, and you realize, like, how much that means.
Hmm. And he may never reflect on it. He might never remember it,
Right,
next year. But what it does is it keeps me accountable, and it helps me. It makes it harder to lie to him next time, because I,
mhm,
kept the truth this time. And I believe that
right,
that's how, like, kind of relationships deteriorate a little bit, is if I lie this time, then next time it's a little bit easier to lie, so I can do it, that much quicker. And then time
right,
after that, it just builds on itself. But then I also think the other way is that, because I confess, I was like, "Hey, look, I'm sorry," and I told the truth. It makes it easier next time
mhm,
when I mess up or I slip up. I can just be like, "Hey, that wasn't accurate,"
right,
and it really will help our relationship continue to grow.
yeah.
Yeah, cool, man. So how effective do you view the modern father? So obviously, with starting, Hall of Fame Fatherhood, you're trying to address something, that you have seen that needs addressing. So, kind
Mm.
of on a broad spectrum, how effective do you view the modern dad?
Oh well, uh I mean, I would say it's a very complex
It kind of is,
problem,
right?
you
It is.
know, and I want to refrain from like just spouting out whatever, like I have
Mhm.
the answers. I think it's a lot more to do with dialogue like we're doing here, because it's not, um, it isn't a one size fits all. Like, yes, there are, you know, the virtues or the values that we want to pass on that are pretty universal, but I I think this is a new thing, like fathers talking about fatherhood and like, hey, what's your playbook? And I'll show you my playbook and
Mhm.
let's compare notes. Like, let's watch film, so to speak, on
Yeah.
how we're fathering our kids. Because, I mean, the one thing I do know is the outside world is changing faster than I can wrap my brain around.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, you know, typically fathers like set the tone and how to, you know, how to move forward. And while I think that is vital and that's what we should be doing, there's something about like this new technology realm of things that, like, at least for me, like I'm not tech savvy. Like,
Yeah. Same.
how do I deal with that? You know?
Mhm.
And so what I think us fathers nowadays have to do is kind of like bridge that gap. Like, okay, we have to pass on this wisdom and like understand that our kids may, like, they're going to be brought up with it, so they're going to understand, like, they're we may have to humble ourselves to allow us to look at them for answers to solutions to the technological side of
Mhm.
life. And so I look at this very much as a bridge. um I don't want to lose, uh you know, the wisdom, traditions,
Mhm.
whatever that looks like for anybody, but and that's kind of like where my focus is. uh but I also understand, like, there's a new way of life coming about, and it's coming whether we want it to or not.
Mhm.
um so it's a very scary place sometimes, but
Mhm.
also a very exciting place. You know, obviously we were put down here at this time for a reason, and there's no better time to be alive than now. And
Mhm.
you know, there's no more important job than being a father in my eyes. So I think the effectiveness of fathers is lacking,
Mhm.
to say the least. Um, and there's a lot of work to do. And
Mhm.
I think things like this is a part of that. Like, obviously we're not gonna save fatherhood or, you know, parenthood on a podcast,
Right.
but the more people are thinking about their day-to-day actions, interactions with their children, you know, the better off I think we'll be. At least that's what I'm betting on anyway.
Yeah, man. I'm hoping that we can get more and more people talking, and then just slowly build this up. I will say that, I mean, you kind of brought up a good point. Is I think we're always playing catch up with technology, and I think technology is changing quicker than what we can play catch up with. Like, we're catching
Yeah,
up at this pace, and then technology is, changing
it's
that quickly, and it makes
right.
it more and more. It makes it harder and harder for fathers to be as effective, because I also think that it's not just the technology world that's changing. I think the entire world is changing like that. I mean, there's issues that my kids are going to face that I've never faced. There's
Mhm.
issues that I face that my dad never faced, and I feel like it continues to get more and more issues that are facing children every single generation, and that's really what we got to be out there just fighting. And I think that the best way to fight it is just with that unconditional love. I mean, you gotta, you love your kids no matter what they're going through, no matter what they're getting into, and ultimately, I think that can keep them grounded when these new technology arises, or whatever the new problems are that arise. I mean, that's what I've seen so far in, my 4 years of being a dad, but
Mm,
I just see that pattern happening. Did you,
yeah.
so I mean, you have two kids that are, I mean, that's quite a gap in between them. The
Mm.
challenges that you faced with your first child, are how much more evolved are the challenges that you face with your 6-year-old versus your adult child?
Uh, well, I mean, technology was, I'm, my oldest got his first phone at 9. His mom bought him one. It wasn't a smartphone, it was like a
Hmm.
slide up phone. And so it didn't have the internet or anything like that. And I was leery of getting him it at that time. Now, I'm sure we're only at 2, 3 years away before my youngest starts asking, like, hey, can I have a phone? So and so has a phone. And it's like, I'm a little bit, definitely a lot more leery
Hmm.
than I was. Uh, I mean, my first go around, I was I was a lot more liberal in my thinking,
Hmm.
uh, and also just not aware, you know. Uh, so I would say my youngest is in for a little bit rougher of a time. I mean, he'll probably hate me a little bit more than my oldest did, but like that's okay. Uh,
Hmm.
um, you know, I I'm gonna walk the razor's edge of finding that balance between, you know, not letting him get sucked in too quickly because it's so
Hmm.
like it's so addicting. I'm addicted
Hmm.
to the phone. Like it, so I have to correct myself, before I can uh effectively tell my
Hmm.
youngest that, hey, stay off, no, you can't have a phone.
Hmm.
Um, but I am I'm hopeful. Like my oldest, like he works in social media, um, and is relatively tech savvy. Um, and I think with the right orientation to it, you know, it definitely can be an amazing thing. I mean, technology
Hmm.
is
I mean, it's
tremendous. Like
letting us do this. I mean, yeah, yeah,
exactly,
yeah. I mean, we're
exactly.
thousands of miles away, and look at this. We're talking, like we're face to face just about.
Right. I mean, and that
Hmm.
was never possible before.
Hmm.
So it's like, all right, it got, there's amazing aspects to it. And I think it's just like anything, if your orientation is wrong, if it's somehow part of your identity, then there's big trouble.
Hmm.
Um, so I think that's the thing to protect against is, you know, make them realize just like, you teach your kid to hammer and a nail, like you teach them how to properly use the hammer because that can obviously do a lot of damage too.
Hmm.
And it's really no different. The lessons are still the same.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, that core concept is still the same. I mean, hammers kill. I don't know. I've read some stat that, whether it's true or not, I don't know, but that they kill more people than guns every year. And
That's crazy. I never heard that before.
I heard it. I don't know if it's true, but even if they're able to measure that, I mean, that to me is that blows my mind.
Yeah, that does. And but with the technology thing, like
Hmm.
we now have the psychological aspect. I mean, because literally they make it so like they keep us in front of it.
Hmm.
And kids don't know any better. Like we can barely get past it as adults.
Hmm.
So it's like, you know, I don't have any answers as far as that's, what's the right answer to that. But I think again, a lot more discussions, a lot more awareness needs to be brought to it because it's very hard for me to see a positive path forward if that encompasses us.
Hmm.
It's very hard to see it.
Mhm.
a bright future.
Yeah, I definitely think, teaching your kids the correct way to use things, yeah, it's definitely huge. And then at the same time, we also have to know how to use things correctly. Because if you're getting on social media and you're not using it correctly, well, then guess what? You just passed on to your kids. They ain't gonna learn it correctly either. So
Exactly.
yeah, I think one of the like a really good way to combat the technology wave is to just stay actively engaged with your children. So then,
Mm.
on that note, what are some ways that you stay actively engaged with your children?
Really, I just setting it down the phone, um, making sure that we try to do dinner at least 3 or 4 times a week.
Mhm,
Shut off the TV, shut off the phones. We sit around the dinner table, even if it's 10 minutes, that we get to have a short conversation, you know, that's still a win.
mhm,
Um, you know, being fit enough to play, like I want to run around with them, play football and baseball, and uh, really just trying to get on his level each and every day.
mhm.
He loves Legos, you know, getting down on the floor with him and building a Lego set, um, just simple things. Just the biggest distraction is the phone.
Mhm.
Um, like especially for me, like I'm employed and I'm pretty much on call 24/7. And you know, there's not too often, after work calls don't happen too often, but it's still something that
Mhm.
is there in the back of my mind that I have to be aware of. And for me, like my breath is my biggest centering, uh the thing that I like to come back to.
Mhm.
Uh so even if I need to go in the room, hey bud, daddy needs a couple minutes, take some deep breaths,
Mhm.
recenter myself, and then get back to him. Uh it's an everyday battle, but that's it's the battlefield I'm on. So
Yeah, that having dinner every single day, that I think is one of the biggest ways that you can really just stay engaged because you sit down to eat, you got that, like you said, at least 10 minutes where you're sitting down, you talk about your day, you talk about what's going on, what problems they're facing. And I can't tell you how many times my parents use like some jujitsu on me at the dinner
yeah.
table to sit there and be like, hey, so you had that problem and this is your solution and this is what's going on. And they like infuse that in there without me even knowing, man. So that having that time to sit down, I think is incredibly important.
Yeah, and that's something that we haven't always done well
Hmm.
at, but over the past uh couple months, like we've said, like this is a this is our thing. Like we want family dinner, and so we have resolved to do that. And
Hmm.
it's simple, but it's not easy. So
Yeah, I love that saying, like how things are simple, but they're not easy.
no, exactly.
Man, at the it sounds so simple, right? Just sit down and eat, no big deal. But it's never that easy. It's never that simple. And
Mhm.
yeah,
No,
I love that saying, simple but not easy.
yeah, I mean, especially with a young kid who doesn't feel like it, or they're tired, or they want to watch their favorite show,
Mhm.
you know, whatever's going on with them, like that's a lot harder to get them to like sit down, even if it's for 10 minutes, you know, it's a challenge sometimes.
Mhm.
And it's like, you know, do you and your family do that?
Sit down, have dinner.
Mm.
We make a point every single day. So our goal is every single day. I mean, it doesn't always happen.
Right.
I I told you a little earlier, I'm in the military, so some days I gotta stay late at work, and it's not an option. So we try our best, and I think that's where my relationship with my son has grown the most, I think, is when we actively sit down and I talk to him about whatever it is that he likes to, whatever it is at the moment that he likes to talk about. Sometimes it's
Mhm.
dinosaurs, and I show him that I'm interested in what he's interested in, and even if I don't know crap about dinosaurs now, but
Right.
let me be interested in what you're interested in. I think that has shown him, hey, I'm here for you. I love you. I care for you. And I think it's a huge, um, it's definitely boosted our relationship a lot, just having that sit down.
Beautiful.
Yeah, man. Cool. So hey, before we wrap this up, I want to hear, you got any last piece of advice for fathers? Maybe if you want any advice for maybe a father who is about to be a dad at before graduating high school or anything like that.
Mm. I would say that, my biggest, for me personally, on my journey, my biggest um, struggle was comparing where I was compared to other people, and comparing yourself to how your parents raised you, and just playing the comparison game, and realize that, like, 98% chance, like, you're gonna fuck up your kids, but you know educate yourself, read, listen. um there's a tremendous amount of resources out there, um and there is no reason, no excuse to not educate yourself on the most important role that you have as a man. um and yeah, I would say that is, don't compare yourself with anybody else, and educate yourself on what needs to be done,
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
do your best, love your kids, and be there to support them. And I would say those are the biggest things a father can
yeah,
do.
yeah. I love that. What you just said, if there's no excuse to not educate yourself. I mean, that's so dead on nowadays with all the stuff that you can do. I know we're bashing on earlier, but technology, it can be used for great things. And
Mm.
man, get out there. I mean, even if it's just a library, go to a library, download something from YouTube, listen to this, listen to us talk, go check out Hall of Fame Fatherhood. Like, man, get out there. There's no reason not to educate yourself.
Well, and it could just be something as simple as talk to your own father. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you have questions, like, hey dad, if you're able to have that relationship, like, why did you do X, Y, and Z when I was a kid? Like, because I think there's a lot of things that go back to that, you know, um, and there's a lot of resentment, a lot of feelings harbored towards parents, because now that we know, we have all this information, all these resources, it's so easy to be like, oh, well, look at this study in this book and what this person says,
Mm-hmm.
and how come my parents didn't know that? And it's like, you know, some grace probably needs to be given, and a conversation needs to be had, and then it's your chance to break the cycle. If it was something really bad that your parents did to you and you didn't like it, well, here's your opportunity to break a cycle. It's like, now you have every resource available to break whatever negative cycle that your parents laid down for you. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, that's where there's no excuses. But I think there is some reconciliation that would be good to take place, if
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's like a perfect ending point right there, dude. Thank you so much for wrapping that up and giving that so neat, so nice and neat about maybe giving some grace out to your parents. Steve, I
Yeah.
want to take this opportunity. Hey, thank you so much for being on the show with us. Thank you so much for being willing to talk. I know Yeah, I know for me, I get scared every single time I go to do one of
Yeah.
these. And you and I were talking earlier, like, man, I get scared every single time because this is, if you knew me, like putting myself out there like this, that's not me at all.
Yeah, I'm very much the same, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. It's been, great talking with you and sharing in the conversation. And yeah, keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, brother. Thank you very much. Hey, I want to give you an opportunity real quick. Just tell everyone how they can get a hold of you and Hall of Fame Fatherhood.
I would say check out the website, halloffamefatherhood.com, and most active on Instagram at Hall of Fame Fatherhood. And yeah, check me out there.
Cool. Steve, thanks again, brother. I
Yeah,
really, really
thanks, Shane.
appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
All right, man. Take care. All right. Have a good week. Have a good rest of your weekend.
You too.
All right. Later, brother.
Later.